And we are all working towards increasing completion rates, eliminate equity gaps, and enhancing the economic mobility of our students. Most of you all are familiar with our Student Basic Needs Report, and if not, you can check it out on our Kentucky Student Success Collaborative website. Our statewide recommendations guided us in producing our Student Basic Needs Report, specifically focusing on recommendation 4. As we convene this community of practice, we hope to continue to learn together, share knowledge and resources, and support each other in those goals that I mentioned before. With that being said, as many of you know, our topic for today is highlighting an anti-poverty institution, Amarillo College. And if you all have been keeping up with some of the research and best practices and Aspen Prize winners, Amarillo College has been featured widely in a multitude of spaces. And I wanted to share just a brief video to kind of ground ourselves. Hang on here just a minute while I share my screen for the video, but wanted to share this video, which I thought was really great to ground ourselves in the work that Jordan is leading. Just 1 second here.
Out here on the high plains, we've learned to look out for each other.
Can everyone hear that, or is there an echo? Is it okay?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
It's no echo.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for clarifying.
Out here on the high plains, we've learned to look out for each other. After all, this was once the frontier. And nowhere do they understand the power of community better than the historic campus of Amarillo College. In fact, AC was recently profiled in the Atlantic Monthly. Editors at the legendary East Coast magazine took notice when Amarillo College began to do more than almost any community college in America when it comes to looking out for students. If an overdue bill is going to keep a student out of school, Amarillo College will dip into its emergency fund to help that student out. AC employs social workers, financial counselors, and even legal aid for students, not to mention free mental health counseling. The school even has a low-cost daycare center for students open 14 hours a day. That's taking the concept of community to the next level. And check this out. This is the new greenhouse at Amarillo College, the product of a $5 million Department of Education grant. You wouldn't expect that in the center of the city on the high plains, students have access to hands-on equipment rarely seen at the university or research level. Down the road at West Texas A&M University, students can major in anything from graphic design to criminal justice.
Oh, she stopped.
All right, so that was a brief video to help us set the stage for Amarillo College and some of the great work that they are doing in their Advocacy and Resource Center. And as I said before, we are so excited to welcome Jordan here. Jordan Herrera serves as the Director of Social Services at Amarillo College. She coordinates and manages services within Amarillo College's Advocacy and Resource Center, which includes an emergency aid program, social services, a scholarship program, food pantry, and a baby resource room. Each one of the services directly serves at-risk students experiencing barriers to their education. In addition, she supervises university undergraduate and graduate social work interns. She also serves on the Evelyn's Sunshine Cottage Board, an agency that directly impacts the students that she serves daily. Jordan is a licensed master social worker, and she holds an associate in psychology from Amarillo College and a bachelor's and master's in social work from West Texas A&M University. With that being said, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to you, Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. And thank you everyone for joining in today.
I do have a little presentation that I just wanted to go over just to kind of share a little more about what we do at Amarillo College, particularly within our Advocacy and Resource Center. It does have quite a bit of information, so I'm going to just hit some highlight points. And also, just kind of to reiterate what Jamie said, we'll have time for Q&A because that's typically always what happens when we have everybody come together to learn more about different holistic ways to serve students. So I am going to go ahead and also share my screen. Give me just a second to make sure I have my PowerPoint where I need it to be. And I'm going to get us started here. Just want to move this over, I think. Let's see here. Okay, let's see if it lets me. Okay. All right, so is everybody able to see that okay? Okay, perfect. And I have a real weird position on my camera, so I'm going to look this way just to make sure I see everything I'm sharing. But I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'm going to go over the way that we have created an institutional system here at Amarillo College to address student poverty barriers. At Amarillo College, we focus on our theory of change that we have at the institution, which really just focuses in on three main areas. And those things include removing a life barrier in an accelerated learning environment through a deep culture of caring equals completion. We have seen that happen for us here at Amarillo College, particularly in the area of the Advocacy and Resource Center, which is where we are focusing on removing a life barrier by addressing student basic needs through different resources and services that we are providing in our department. This next screen just kind of highlights our top 10 student barriers. We have actually been in the business of looking at and focusing on student needs at the college for well over almost 12 years now. So we've been kind of deep into this work for a while. And we always like to kind of go back to talk about how we got here. And our former president, Dr. Lowry Hart, worked alongside leaders within our Amarillo community to really hone in on just like the state of our community back 10, 12 years ago, like what was going on. They were seeing trends that people in our Amarillo community were not really accessing college and using that as a route out of maybe poverty or as an option post high school graduation. And they wanted to figure out, what was going on? Why were people not choosing to not go anywhere as opposed to come to Amarillo College? So what they did was started in a very grassroots efforts here at Amarillo College and decided to put together a survey that they conducted within the college. Of course, now, 12 years down the road, there's so many different resources that you can use. There's so many different tools that you can utilize at your institution to help you basically gather this information that they did just in-house, very simple back then. But what we wanted to know was, what were these barriers that were keeping students from being successful in the classroom? What are barriers that were keeping people from even coming to school? What were their concerns? And this was the list that we came up with at that time. Students told us that, having access to childcare, maybe being able to afford childcare was a barrier. Having access to food, if they weren't sure, how they were going to eat, not only for themselves, maybe their families, that seemed to be a stressor. They worried about that and it affected them in the classroom. Also, students who were worried about housing, maybe they were possibly in the position of being evicted, or they were maybe already homeless, right? Couch surfing, but to them, maybe they didn't really think that was them being in a homeless state. Also, access to transportation, access to having assistance with utilities in the event that they did have some of those services turned off. So we learned very quickly that these were things that students were worried about, the students were concerned about. And so at the time, our institution made it its priority to find ways to help students find resources that would help them with these things that they identified. And a lot of the things that we have listed here we have made a great effort in trying to provide a service that will provide direct access to a particular resource to cover that need on campus, or we have been very intentional in connecting with a service out in our community that we know we can rely on to help us meet these needs of our students. So like I mentioned, this was done, almost 12 years ago, as our first attempt at trying to figure out what were barriers that students were facing. Since we have participated in other surveys, some that you may be familiar with, we have worked with the Hope Center in the past. We have utilized their survey to kind of hone in on student needs a few years back. We've continued to utilize a financial wellness survey through the Trellis Foundation that allows us to kind of have an idea of the students' needs that they have when they complete that one. We also do the SENT survey and the KYSSC survey as well. And so there's a few areas that we're getting information that we've continued to utilize the service through that survey to help us. So we're not having to do, in-house survey, particularly the way we did back then. But one thing that has come out of us just having this curious mind on what our student barriers are, was our creation of our student basic needs assessment. And I like to think of it as what we're looking at now and really honing in on as an in-house tool that provides my team, our counseling center, and our tutoring services information that comes directly from students every semester that tells us what's going on and possibly already alerts us to know maybe our students are suffering and they don't know how they are going to put food on the table. Maybe they are at risk of being evicted or losing their home to foreclosure. It's a voluntary assessment that we do put out in our portal where they access Blackboard and they get to all of their student information here at the college. It is something that, again, they volunteer to complete. Some students will just completely bypass it, will not complete it, but most students will take the time to fill this out. And it really helps those three departments, like I mentioned, the Advocacy and Resource Center, the Counseling Center, and our tutoring services, to have a more proactive role in a student's life here at Amarillo College, as opposed to being reactive when they've been referred to us maybe a few weeks into the semester or a few months down the road. And it's a great tool. We're really glad that we've used it. It actually came into fruition because of COVID. Whenever we were dispersing our CARES money, we wanted just to make sure we had some kind of tool to keep us accountable for distributing the funding that we received at that time. And also, again, to give us an idea of what students were needing most during that time, especially during a pandemic where we were all trying to figure out what's going on and how do we, get from point A to point B. And so it has been a tool that we have utilized at the college since the fall of 2020. When we started using it at that time, and for the couple of years after, when we had COVID funds and things like that, it was the tool that we would use to provide information on resources and things like that to the students. But now, truly, like I mentioned, it is our tool that our three departments utilize and have access to be in a more proactive state with our students. My team and I, we started classes this week on Tuesday, and it's been crazy. Just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at when we get results from this assessment. We came in on Tuesday to almost 200 email alerts from students that rank themselves a 3 or a higher. So basically indicating that they needed help all the way up to being in a crisis level at a 5. Those students are automatically triggered to our department email, and one of us as social workers will reach out to them and check in with them to see what's going on, share information, get them connected to the right services and resources. And so that's just a little bit to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. I checked, I want to say it was yesterday, just to kind of see on our chart where we were on how many students have done this assessment. And we were well over 1,200 who had already identified themselves as a 3 or higher. So there are more that have done it. They may have just, they're not on our radar because they may have answered those questions and said that they were fine, they didn't need anything. We don't ever see those. We just see the ones who are in crisis. So just to kind of lay the groundwork on a tool that could be useful down the road, just so you have this idea, fresh data to tell you what is it that is that our students are worried about, what are their needs. So, and of course, that data being continuously updated just allows for the door to open for, you know, funding and maybe additional programs or, you know, grants, things like that. So that's why we encourage something like that. But we always like to tell that story of how we got to this point. And, you know, just again, sometimes we have to start simple, we have to start very grassroots and then end up building to something bigger. But I think that this has been what's been so helpful for us at Amarillo College in getting to really know who the students are. And that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. It seems like this is something we're going to continue to do to help students. The next screen here is just a little breakdown, a visual, if you will, of our Advocacy and Resource Center. I'm going to kind of just set the stage on how we ended up having our center come to fruition. We have several services that Jamie mentioned through the intro about us helping with emergency aid, our social services, the scholarship program we have, the food pantry, baby resources. And just for context, so people understand, at Amarillo College, those resources existed prior to the creation of the Advocacy and Resource Center. They were kind of siloed out though in different areas. Some of those, like our scholarship program and our social services, we lived under the House of Advising because I don't think they quite knew maybe where to put us back then. Our food pantry was actually efforts done by faculty members in our speech and communications department. Just again, instructors who saw a need, wanted to find a way to address that need. And just because they were the ones, that's where the food pantry lived for the first few years of its life. And so in 2016, our former president, Dr. Lowry Hart, really wanted to allow the poverty initiative and the social services program that was that came from our work within poverty to really have the place and space to grow into what the vision was, what his dream was for us to really help students and meet them where they are. And so in 2016, we created our Advocacy and Resource Center, honestly, with like stolen property. I'm being 100% honest here. We actually took over this space that you're looking at. It did not belong to us. It was not built for us. It was actually built for our career center. And we were given an opportunity to try to bring everything together under one roof for students to have an easy access to services. And for us to really, you know, put it out there that we were serious and committed to helping students address these needs. So our center here is located on the first floor of one of the most utilized buildings on campus. It is our Ware Student Commons building. And so just so you have some context of what all lives within, we have our computer program, underground computer area where students can come in and access internet, computer, all of that, print, everything. It's all in our basement. So there's lots of students coming in for that. We have a tutoring center that is just right across the way from us. So there's lots of students utilizing tutoring services. So they're walking right by us whenever they're coming in for service. We also have our library in this building, and a few other departments existed here with us, Career Center upstairs in another area, and our GED program, things like that. So we were positioned to be in a place where students were going to see us front and center. You really couldn't miss it. You can't see it in this picture, but to the left of what you're looking at, there was our food pantry. So where those two students are looking at food, when you walk in and walk by the arc, you can see like food, you could see that. And that was prior to COVID. And so things have had to change a little bit for us, but very visible, incredibly visible, which was the purpose. So as you can imagine, or you might be wondering, like, how did that go over with people? Has everybody always been on board with like everything you're doing? And the truth of the matter is, no, not everybody was always on board with this big drastic change to move towards social workers and social services and providing access and things like that, as you can imagine. And we did kind of get a little bit of pushback having the services provided in a space such as this. And what I mean by that is just we did have people who were just concerned that maybe students were not going to come because they were going to feel too exposed, or they were going to feel like they were in a fishbowl and they were not going to have this like privacy to come in and talk to people about, you know, getting food that day, or, you know, talking to a social worker to get some help. And we have been so proud to just see the growth of that not being the reality of what happened for us at Amarillo College. The very first academic year that we spent down here in the ARC in its new location, we served about 7% of our student population at Amarillo College. After that first year, we grew to 21% of students accessing the ARC for some reason or other for one of the services. And now we are, you know, gosh, we're going on how many years? 8 years now. This summer will be 8 years. And we are now sitting at serving about 60% of the whole student population at Amarillo College. So we've seen some tremendous growth over these last 8 years. And I don't think it's going to stop. And that's because we live in a home that really wasn't made for us. We've definitely outgrown this space. And the talks that we are in now are going to just be to expand this space still where it's located, but to also include our sister department, the counseling center, bring them over with us because it makes more sense to have that holistic approach with our service plus theirs. And that should be coming in the next couple of years, hopefully for us, but we are excited. But all that to say that bringing a service or creating a service and with the intention that you have to help students, it will take off. And our biggest advice to people is just, you know, if you build it, they will come. So prepare for what that looks like if you outgrow a space, or you need to change things, you know, depending on the usage. Just to share that bit of information, because we definitely have outgrown the space, but we're happy to look to the future on where we're going to go and what's going to happen next for us. And you know, one thing that happened when, you know, people were concerned on, you know, how are students going to come? Are you sure they're going to feel comfortable? All of those concerns. I remember just telling people it's really not going to matter where they're at. If they're under a fish, if they're in a fish bowl or they're under a microscope. What matters here is how we treat students, and if we treat them with dignity and respect, it really doesn't matter if there is a line of people behind them. And what will happen is word of mouth will get more people here because they're going to see, oh my gosh, like, yeah, this isn't just a place that you say the college says helps. This is a place where they really help you. And so we've been able to just see that throughout the years with our data. And I'll kind of go a little bit more into detail with that stuff in a few slides here in a little bit. Just to paint the picture here also, and sharing a little bit of data points with you on our ARC student profile. So those of you who might be from other institutions, some of these like data points might look familiar. They might seem like, oh, this kind of looks like students we work with or that we know of through other institutions. And so just so you have an idea of what the ARC student looked like for the spring semester and this past fall, I put that here on the screen just for you to see like the type of student that we're helping. I'm willing to bet it's very similar to maybe who you're serving, which is typically first generation, where we help a lot of part-time students, they're minority. We see a lot of female students coming in asking for help. A lot of the students that come in still needing help with, you know, whatever the need is at the time, they are awarded Pell. So they are Pell eligible, they are receiving the Pell grant, but it's not enough for them to make it right through daily life and things that come up and emergencies. And our students that we're serving, the majority of them are all typically about over the age of 25. Our student base of serving like the 18 to 21-year-old, that is growing. But we primarily serve students who are over age 25. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. I think that's always helpful for people to see, again, just who it is that we can talk about as the student particularly the student within the ARC. At Amarillo College, we're also known for profiling our student at Amarillo College and really making her real. We've known her as Maria over the last several years. But again, our leadership here looks at this same kind of data to really get an idea of who is the student coming to Amarillo College this year. So we are trying to stay ahead and on top of, again, meeting those needs for the student that we currently have, not students that we wish we would have had or hope we have one day or whatever. We're focusing on who we have and how we need to help them now. One thing we always share as well with those, getting started in this kind of work is my team, we are all social workers. We highly encourage, if you're able to, provide access to a social worker, providing basic need access at your institution or at institutions you might work with. We really think that the skill set we have, it fits what the work that we're doing. Our core values are very similar, I believe, to what you want to see when you're helping somebody meet basic needs and helping them address those things. We are in a position to advocate for students that, and sometimes it looks different. It looks like, maybe we don't need to be here right now. Maybe like we need to look at coming next semester when our lives are a little bit more stable and we have more of a solid foundation at home. But when you do come, or when that time happens, we're here. These are things you can have access to. Sometimes it also, is advocating on their behalf to other departments, faculty members, whatever that looks like. But always keeping the integrity of them at heart and just trying to help them the best way we can, being their voice when they're not. So we definitely encourage, if you're able to bring in social workers, to do so. The other thing that helps when you do have social workers in these roles is we do typically have and this can happen, like, if somebody who's very connected to, community and things, but typically we have had to rely on a almost like a handbook of like resources and people in our own communities that we know these places can do these things, or we know people at these different nonprofits in town that can help. And so I feel like we just have a wealth of knowledge that can really come to the table and help students and, help them do, different applications for services, things like that. And also early on in our works of having social services and addressing these needs, we did rely very heavily on the ability to bring in social work interns to the college to help us do the work for free so they could graduate. But to do that, those students have to be supervised by a licensed social worker. So that was the other reason why we've always thought, having a social worker truly is the best thing that you can do, because in the event you're not in a position to hire, you can always look at bringing in social work interns to help you do, assessments or just kind of information share, data collection, things like that. They're very trainable. It's something they have to do to get through college. And so that is something we've done over the last several years from the beginning, and something we definitely encourage. And also, I think Dr. Larry Hart, he also just kind of wanted to showcase that we were shifting at that time 12 years ago into focusing on students and the needs that they had. And that kind of was scary for some people, and that's okay. That's normal. And I think what sometimes we saw here, we had people who were concerned thinking, oh no, like now I have to be a social worker too. Like I can't just teach my class and move on with my life, or provide, advising services and move on. And what he would always say is like, I'm not asking you all to be social workers, but I want you to know where they are on our campus so you can send your students to them, to connect them to services. I'm not asking you to do that. We have them. I just need you to be aware, I need you to be educated to know who can help our students. And so that was one thing I think that helped a lot of people kind of calm down in a way, like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And then the more we got out there and showcased and told people, yes, like we will take care of that. We will take them off your hands at this point. We will help them. That helped a lot too, just to kind of ease some of that. Another thing that we've done within our program and what we do within the advocacy and resource centers, we have intentionally built very strong community partnerships. I think for this type of work, this is needed 100%, because unless, you have millions and billions, trillions of dollars to create all of these things yourself, you have to rely on community to help you meet needs. And so what we've done over the years, and again, I like to think that social work muscle has really helped us in establishing a lot of these partnerships and keeping them healthy throughout the years. We've had to do that to meet student needs. But some of the ones I want to highlight on this page, I won't do all of them, but like those that we work with a lot, I want to just highlight because it does take a village, right? I mean, everybody has a role in helping students address needs. And there are people
Stop.
in your community who are doing things that are amazing and helping your community, but they might have a way to particularly provide something additional to students that you work with. And so a lot of the things that we did was we established meetings with these organizations and kind of told them what we did at Amarillo College, what we were planning to do. And we wanted to know, like, how could we serve their customer, and then how could they serve our student, and just kind of find this middle ground. But some of the things that have come out of these partnerships include in the center, we have the Amarillo Vision Specialist and Room Optical. We have two optometrists who see our students for free. They provide a free eye exam if that's something a student might need. And then we help with, through our emergency aid, with covering the cost of lenses and frames for students. Of course, they can't go completely, wild and go get designer frames and things like that. We can limit that, but we do provide access to sight, right? So they're able to see the board and they're able to do homework, things like that. We also have worked very closely with Panhandle Community Services. They are one of the larger agencies that we have spent a lot of time with over the last few years, but they provide a lot of service for people in our community. Those things include access to like HUD vouchers. They have access to additional utility assistance that can be accessed multiple times a year. They have a health navigator program for, so as you can imagine, students who may not have any insurance that might need help getting insurance. We send them to them for them to help out. We, over the last, I believe it's been maybe 5 years now, or close to 5 years, we've worked directly with the Amarillo Community Development Department, and we have secured free transportation for our students. So in Amarillo, our public transit service is not great. They revamped and kind of rerouted some things over the last few years, which has made it better. But they have come into an agreement with us to provide access to the buses for free for our students, as long as they show student ID. I know there's other communities that have probably been doing that for a long time, may even kind of look a little different, but for us, that was huge because we do have so many students that walk and maybe ride bikes and things like that. So we were really proud of that and happy that we've been able to continue that for several years. The other that I really want to highlight is our snack pack for kids. So on our food pantry, we have now grown to 5 food pantries all together at all of our campuses. As you can imagine, when you are providing access to food to that capacity, donations and food drives, they're great, but like we really need to secure and provide consistency, and partnering with Snack Pack allowed us to do that. So on the next slide, what you're going to see here is just a kind of an overview of what this really looks like. And this has been this partnership that we've developed over the last 8 years with them. Basically what they did was they redeveloped a business model to meet our needs when we opened the Advocacy and Resource Center. They were like, we want to help you provide high quality affordable food to your students. They believe, of course, we understand sometimes food pantries are accustomed to being started with food drives, things like that. And that's perfectly fine. That's how we had to start. And we did that for several years before walking into this partnership. But they really helped us by allowing us to order directly off of their co-op for the prices that they get their food. And they redeveloped the model that they had in the high schools here at Amarillo, in Amarillo ISD. And what they did was they had something called like a snack shack that they had there, where students were filling orders for other students, and providing the bag of food for them over the weekend for them to take home, and providing them the ability to come and pick up those food items in a very safe and secure, trusted space. So that could have been maybe the student's nurse's office or counselor's office, whatever. So what we ended up doing was we shifted over and created our own order form very similar to theirs during the time of COVID. And it allowed us to really follow suit with their model, and it allowed us to move to an online ordering system that allows our students to pick the items that we get directly from Snack Pack for Kids. And it's been a really beautiful thing. We're, well over 3 years into using that as our method of providing food at our main campus. And I don't think we're really going to stop that. I think students like the convenience of ordering online, picking what they want, just like how we get to at Target and Walmart, at the grocery store. And it's been so helpful. So, with this picture here, you're truly seeing just like this partnership in action. And what happens is, as you can imagine, with the beginning of a semester, just trying to make sure we have enough food, we have everything we need. What we have come to expect from them, and they have provided, is this tremendous customer service that they provide to us. I can place an order for pretty large, order like you're seeing on the screen, and within 24 hours, that order is delivered to us here at the college and ready to be put on shelves. And so it's been an amazing partnership that we've had with them, and definitely what we had to move towards to accommodate all of those food pantries that we have. So we just wanted to kind of showcase that with you. As mentioned, we do provide emergency aid to students at Amarillo College. It has been something that we have been doing over, the last 12 years. So we're really proud of this. As you can imagine, what we want with emergency aid, I think, is what everybody who really wants to provide it, wants to see come to fruition, which is providing that financial resource that can help a student overcome that barrier that they're facing, especially that financial barrier. But to really act in a way that this is an emergency, so we don't have time to wait for a committee to get together to make a decision that, yes, we're going to help this student with a couple $100s. We have been able to be trusted to make decisions alongside our Amarillo College Foundation and with the assistance, of course, with our business office to help students in true emergency needs. So what that ends up kind of looking like is, let me go back one screen. What that ends up looking like is students come into the Advocacy and Resource Center, or they're connected to us in some way. It could be that assessment, it could be them calling, they could be referred by an instructor, and they tell us, hey, I'm actually like struggling right now. Maybe I don't have enough money and my electricity just got cut off. And so what we look for, whenever we help students, and what we need to move forward with that, request, is we just want to make sure that our student is enrolled in classes. We just need them to be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours, academic hours, and they have to maintain a 2.0. So when we work with students who are brand new, we had this kind of looked at by an intern we had one year. It's like, what do you do when they're brand new? They don't have GPA. Well, if we can't resort back to a previous GPA, maybe from another institution, or maybe even consider a high school GPA, our foundation has allowed us to consider the students' current grades that they have in Blackboard. And as long as they're participating in class, they're doing homework, it looks good, we can move on and help them with whatever their need is. So we keep it very simple: enrolled in at least 6 hours, 2.0 GPA at least. And because of the amount of students that we've helped over the years and funding, we have had to cut down on how often we help. So right now we are at a once per academic year setup. And we just went from providing up to $800. We're shifting that down to $500 just because of how many students we have helped. But this is what we try to focus on. We try to focus on rent, mortgage, electricity, any kind of utility that, might be a need for them, maybe childcare expenses that they can't afford. We're looking at transportation, providing gas cards to them, or helping with car payments. And then we cover minor medical expenses, such as maybe paying for those glasses that we sent them for, possibly we've helped like with prescription if we needed to, if our counseling center can't help. So just little things like that. And we're incredibly, again, like I said, just happy that we've been able to do this for so long. But just so you guys kind of have an idea, I do have some things to show y'all on this next slide. Just this past fall, we gave out over $206,000 in emergency aid for students that were in need. As you can imagine, since COVID and, not having access to any, type of COVID funds or anything like that we were relying on there for a few years, our emergency aid has really been utilized way more than we've ever seen in the last, since I've been here. I've been here since the beginning. So what we've been seeing over the last few years is just mind-boggling. But just so you can kind of see, we gave out over $206,000 just this fall. And keep in mind, this was just for students that met those qualifications that we were able to help them. And then that total I was able to kind of pull together for y'all today is a little over 1,100 students since the fall of 2021 have gotten emergency aid in some form from us in the Advocacy and Resource Center. And over the past 5 years, over the past 5 years, we have given out over $940,000. So it has been crazy. We have been very busy. My team, they're phenomenal and just pushing through the requests that we get. And it's been scary at the same time. I'm not going to lie. Just how are we going to sustain, these requests, these needs, which is why I share with you, we've had to, shift from 800 to 500. And this is because before COVID was a thing, and that was like something that really affected a lot of people. And I think what COVID did for us was I think made a lot of people feel more comfortable asking for help, which is perfect for us. Like that's what we want. We want students to tell us. But it is scary when you see money just kind of flying through and just going. And so what we've been doing is we've worked directly with our Amarillo College Foundation. I failed to mention, where did the money come from? The initial $20,000 that we got in 2012 came from them. They provided that $20,000 seed money to us. And then they made a commitment every year to provide X amount of dollars for that fund. And over the years, we have had some generous donors in the community that have given like $300,000-$400,000 to our program. We've also had a couple of endowments that have come through to help us as well. And right now we're kind of finally like in this position where we're like, oh, what do we do? Right. And I always have to try to stay positive and think, well, at least we're, 12 years down the road thinking, what do we do? How do we continue to sustain? And so we are working right now directly with our foundation plus our Amarillo area foundation in Amarillo to secure more funding and grants that are going to help us continue helping students. We also have received, I believe it's pretty close to like $35,000 directly from one of our utility companies here in town, who've given gifts not only for the utility services that we provide, but even our food pantry. So I feel like now I'm kind of taking that role back of what we used to do in the beginning, kind of hustling and telling people, hey, we have this program, hopefully they'll donate. Having those campaigns to really get us back on the map. But again, I look at it, like with the speckle of hope of, well, at least we're this far down the road now, thinking about what we're doing and how we're having to sustain. But this is just to paint you that picture. This is the topic that a lot of people will have questions on. And I know Jamie and I talked about maybe following up with another time to answer more thorough questions, but just in the sake of time, I'm going to push us through a little bit here. We also provide in our department access to scholarships that help students with maybe childcare expenses and transportation expenses. We are able to do that through the Carl Perkins grant that we receive here at the institution. that is another component of assistance that we're providing. The amount that we award through this program is not emergency aid. This is a whole other area that we have access to. But basically, we look at students who are in workforce education eligible programs, and we award them childcare scholarships to help with the cost of childcare if they're paying out of pocket. And also if the student may be commuting for clinical, if they're like in health science programs, we are helping those students with gas reimbursement. So they're awarded depending on where they live, where they're commuting, so much. And typically with this program, we receive about $100,000 for the academic year to help students. And we end up helping close to about 200 students whenever they sign up for this program. So this is just an additional service that we provide. We also provide access to traditional scholarships, tuition and textbooks that we continue to work with the foundation on as well with that particular need in awarding students that maybe in the instruments that were created were geared to helping adult students or single mothers, things like that. We get access to all of those scholarships and help students. So this is helpful again for my team as they work with students that they know, oh my gosh, they could benefit from that scholarship from, you know, this particular donor, whatever that is. So it's very helpful for us. Here I wanted to just kind of show you just for context over the years, what we're looking at in growth of the Advocacy and Resource Center. So in blue, you're seeing 3 breakdowns here, starting from 2020, going up to this academic year of 2022, 2023. But in blue, that blue column is going to show you the unique number of students served within the Advocacy and Resource Center. So we have a phenomenal IR team who has created a dashboard for us that has access to data, real data that shows us how many students are coming in, those unique students versus visits. And so as you can imagine, students coming in can come in for 1 to 7 needs, right? So that's why that total visit number is a lot higher. But just so you have some context there on how many students we're seeing and serving, this is what it looks like and how it's looked over the last few years. This was a video, we don't have time for that one, so I'm just going to move us into questions that you may have. I'm going to go into the chat now.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I'll help you out here
Okay,
too with the questions because I've been watching the chat. So I'll go back up to the top around how many staff does it take to manage the Advocacy and Resource Center?
Yeah. So my team is a team of 5. There's 4 full-time social workers. I'm the director of social services, and I have 3 social service coordinators, and I have 1 part-time food pantry assistant.
Great. Does the partner org, I think this was the question around the snack for pack.
Mm-hmm.
Does the partner org do all the delivery and stocking shelves?
So they do deliver to our central receiving department, and our central receiving department at that point takes over, and they actually deliver to our food pantry here at the Washington campus, the main campus. And they do take the other orders when they come out to the other 2 of the other campuses within Amarillo. They'll help take those. They don't stock the shelves themselves through Snack Pack. Our central receiving team is so helpful though. They prepare like just the rows and columns right outside of the cabinet, the shelving space for Karen, my food pantry assistant, to easily just put in. They now know like this is where the corn goes, this is where the beans go, and they'll just stack that stuff and then she puts them on the shelf. But that is why we had to hire a part-time food pantry assistant, because prior to her joining us in 2021, the fall of 2021, my team that I had then and myself, we also did that on top of all the other things we did here. So we're very blessed and grateful to have her. When she's sick, like I freak out for a second and then I'm like, it's okay. We did this before. We'll figure it out.
Have you done a retention analysis based on the emergency aid fund?
So we're actually looking at that right now. We're really looking at the real detailed information around that. We've had some older information on that, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we are looking at that because of us just wanting to provide that security and that sustainability around emergency aid. But we know for sure that students who come to the ARC as a whole are retained at a higher rate than they are at the institution overall. And so we know that the services we're providing, which that does include that emergency aid, do have impact on them.
Jordan, I would just share that in Kentucky, we collected data from just one semester, and it was the fall of 22, I think. And at our 4 community colleges that participated, students that received an emergency aid award were retained to the spring semester at 80% compared to 60% of the general student population at those colleges. So I'm really interested to see kind of looking at other states, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to dig deeper around what is the right amount of aid threshold that helps a student retain and kind of get over that emergency hump. Because, and then the ROI and being able to say, well, we invested $1 million in emergency aid and 80% of those students graduated, you know, like that is a good investment of our funds.
Yeah.
And hopefully they become alumni donors down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that you hit on a good talking point with emergency aid that I get asked, you know, how much should we give in emergency aid? And I think what we've been able to do at Amarillo College, with the exception of like this past year, we've always looked at it in a whole individual way. It depends. Each student needs something different. Some students just need a couple $100. Some don't even need $100. And then you do have some that are closer to that 1,000 threshold. And that's that has been so beautiful about our program, is just really looking at the student as an individual and providing that holistic assistance to them, instead of just like, this is it, this is all you get. And so even though we've capped to 800 to 500, that doesn't mean every one of them is going to need that. Like, we still look at them as an individual. But I feel like that's what emergency aid should be. Like, you really can't put it in a box because it just looks so different all across the board.
All right, this question is from Sandy. From where do the no excuses funds come?
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I kind of went through that so fast. So I apologize. I should have started again with our funds come from the Amarillo College Foundation. As I mentioned, they did provide us with that seed money in 2012 and have provided continuous support since then. All of the donors that we've had out in the community who've provided larger gifts all work through the foundation to get all of those things established. And so we rely very heavily on the Amarillo College Foundation to help sustain the funds for the No Excuses Fund.
Thank you. All right, any other questions that folks have at this time? I did have one question around there was like an internal rank where students kind of said, like, I think you said scale from 3 to 5 on their need. Is there like definitions around like 3 to 5, or is it just kind of self-evaluative?
Yeah, no, there is. And I hope this is where I have this. Yes. Okay, so just so you kind of know that breakdown. So one, when they do that self-assessment, that's where we're looking at that assessment. The basic needs self-assessment is that tool we're using now. It's the tool that my team only sees those that are ranking a 3 and higher. But those rankings are: 1 is I'm good, no action is needed by anybody at Amarillo College. Number 2, it states that they're struggling and we kind of want to monitor them. 3 is I need help. 4 is I'm in distress. And 5 is I'm in crisis. So when they're going out there and they're selecting, like under housing, food, healthcare, mental health care, they're seeing all of that listed. So they're able to tell us I'm fine or I'm in crisis.
Yeah.
Is it correct to assume that Amarillo College doesn't offer student housing, like traditional housing?
Yeah, so we don't have dorms here at Amarillo College. The only housing, like if you were to look on our website, that it's going to talk about is housing that's provided out at our East Campus, which is like where our technical program is. It was an old, like I think it was old military base or Air Force base, something of the sort. And so those homes are Amarillo College property. They are rented, but they're rented to anybody in Amarillo who desires to live out there. It is a little bit of a commute. But we do have a lot of students, especially when they're new or maybe they're coming from smaller areas, they think that's where the dorms are. And we're like, no, that's not it. So we try very hard to help them find apartments that might work with them or provide some type of discount. That Amarillo College housing that's out there, they do provide a bit of a discount to the students that go out there. But I think for the most part, those truly are just general Amarillo residents that are renting from us. We did, for those students that were housing insecure during COVID, we did actually have access to HUD applications that secured HUD vouchers for students. We had like access to 50, and we were able to do that with students. We haven't gotten that replenished or anything from the city, but it is something that we were doing at the time to help. But now we do send to like Panhandle Community Services and things like that to help. But we try, sometimes apartments call us and they're like, hey, we have spots and we can do this. And so we just share that information with students.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up.
There's one in the chat. There's a question in the chat. Is there any information that points to the higher percentage of first-gen women and minorities as the data indicated?
Yeah, so I think at Amarillo College, the reason why it showcases that way is because that's like our overall data just for the institution as well. We serve a lot of first gen. That is the higher percentage of students that we're serving as a whole in the population here. Predominantly students at Amarillo College are female. We have seen an increase in males, particularly an increase in male students accessing the ARC, which is amazing because there for a few years our female numbers sometimes would be in the low 80s and like our male numbers were so small. And I just think that in social services as a whole, you don't really see males accessing those services. So for us, at least in our department, that made a lot of sense to us. And that's where my team and I strive to when we have male students here. We really take the time to just showcase our services as we do this. This is for you as a student, right? Like just like you go to financial aid, you go to advising, these are things for you. So what we're seeing with those data points is very similar to what we see at the institution as a whole. And we are a minority majority institution as well. So that's why that's showcased too.
All right. First off, thank you so much, Jordan, for taking the time to come here and share more about the award-winning Advocacy and Resource Center at Amarillo College and really peeling back the layers and the curtain around what goes on and how you all continue to sustain these offerings to your students. Jordan mentioned that she graciously will be coming back to our next community of practice, as we know that this is a lot of information to digest. And so this will be the following community of practice will be an opportunity for her to continue to elaborate on some of the pieces that she has already shared with us. It's for you to spread the word to your colleagues to see if there are more team members that you'd like to invite to this community of practice and learn more about what's going on at Amarillo College. And so we're so happy that she'll be back. If you have additional questions, we'll be able to answer those in our next community of practice, which will be on February 14th. I'll share this in the follow-up email, but just want to briefly voice over that it will be February 14th. We moved it up so that we could space it out from the Student Success Summit, which will be February 26th through 27th. Many of you have already registered, but if you still need to register, you can click on that link in the follow-up email. And as always, a plug for our Impact Exchange. We will share all of the resources here from this community of practice, as well as our recording on the Impact Exchange. If you want to share it with colleagues or look back over it to review, you can do that as well on Impact Exchange. All right, thank you all so much for joining us on this cold, wintry day here in Kentucky. Yes, and our Student Basic Needs track at the summit will be led by Stacy Perniski at the Hope Center. So I know that she will be popular. So make sure that you sign up, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you all so much for joining again, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you all.